In the golden age of Athens, a dark secret lurked beneath the surface of their vibrant democracy. A secret so subversive, so dangerous, that those who dared to speak of it risked everything. This is the story of the Eleusinian Mysteries, the most sacred rituals of ancient Greece. But it's also a story of betrayal, political intrigue, and a cover-up that would send shockwaves throughout the ancient world. The Eleusinian Mysteries are the most well-documented Greek cult. It presents a huge amount of evidence for archaeologists: sanctuary buildings, inscriptions about sacred laws, info about priests, and dedications of the gods and heroes in art and literature. People were drawn to the cult for thousands of years, from the early days, which were mentioned in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, until it was banned by Theodosius the Great around 400 CE. The cult was popular all over Greece and the Roman Empire, and people said that it brought them happiness and comfort in their daily lives. Enter Alcibiades, a charismatic and ambitious Athenian general whose actions would have unforeseen and devastating consequences not only for himself, but also for the sanctity of the Eleusinian Mysteries. And lurking in the background of our story is another significant figure, Andocides, a nobleman soon to be branded a criminal. We'll see that their fates intertwine in a scandal that would shake the foundations of Athens, desecrate the famous Eleusinian Mysteries, and ultimately expose a web of deceit designed to protect the true perpetrators, the oligarchs who lurked in the shadows. The year is 415 BCE, and Athens buzzes with the excitement of the impending Sicilian expedition. As warships prepared to depart from Piraeus, a double scandal erupted. On the morning of the 7th of June, Athens awoke to a shocking sight. All the sacred boundary stones in Athens, the Herms, had their faces smashed. Now, nobody knew who did it, but large public rewards were immediately offered to find those responsible. And it was further voted that anyone who knew of any act of impiety that was related to this should come forward and should tell the demos without being scared of getting in trouble. An unremarkable man named Pythonicus requested to speak before the assembly, and he dropped a bombshell. The great Alcibiades, one of the generals in command of the forces about to sail for the west, was personally responsible for the desecration, and had also recently parodied the Eleusinian Mysteries with a party of friends. The perpetrators were part of a political faction, a hetaeria. These were friends who got drunk, ate, and recited poetry, enjoying the amenities offered by the symposium. Maybe Alcibiades actually put on the distinctive robe of the Hierophant to play his role. Alcibiades, the golden boy of Athens, had long been a lightning rod for both admiration and suspicion. His rise to power was meteoric, his ambition boundless. But as his influence had grown, so did the whispers of his detractors. Were there those who sought to exploit the scandal, to bring down the rising star and to seize power for themselves? Alcibiades and his buddies were assuming the authority of the Eleusinian priests and of Athens itself. Athens was not prepared to see a cult which gave expression to her most intimate religious beliefs exposed to deliberate ridicule. Now, the Eumolpidae and the Charikes were the families in charge of the mystery celebrations. The high priest of the Hierophant came from the Eumolpidae family, and the torchbearer, the Dadukos, and sacred herald Hierochaerux came from the Charikes family. Getting initiated was a personal choice, and most Athenians went for it. It wasn't just for citizens, though. Women, slaves, and foreigners could all take part. The first part of the initiation could happen at different times, either in Eleusis or at the Eleusinian sanctuary near the Agora in Athens. The initiates sat on a stool covered with a ram fleece, and covering their head while a winnowing fan was held over them, a torch was then brought from below. The Greeks probably thought this was purification by air and fire. These were upsetting scenarios, scary experiences. Now, after the sacrifice and the seated meditation, there was some kind of meeting with the gods, Demeter and Kore, and the presentation of a holy sacred chest. What was inside? That's the question. There are hints of different stages of the initiation rites, but it's all in code. In other words, I fasted, I drank a special drink, I took something out of the box, did something, then put it back in the basket, then from the basket back into the box. We don't know what these symbols were. They really could have been anything. Genital symbols, something symbolizing fertility, something more obscene. The vital aspect of the entire act, according to the philosopher Aristotle, was not to acquire knowledge, but to undergo an experience, pathein, and to be led into the proper frame of mind through the proceeding. This experience led into the famous great festival of Eleusis, the great procession from Athens to Eleusis along the sacred way. After the long trek with ritual mocking and dancing, the initiates arrived at the gates of Eleusis. Just beyond the gates, the Mysti would encounter a grotto dedicated to Pluto or Hades, the lord of the underworld. Once within the telesterion, the primary temple, there were two distinct groups of participants. The Mistai, who were first-time attendees, and the Apoptai, or Watchers, who had participated at least once before. Each initiate was accompanied by a special mentor called a Mystagogos, who guided them into the sanctuary. The Hall of Mysteries, the telesterion, was shrouded in darkness. The crowd thronged as priests officiated by torchlight. Dreadful, terrifying things were shown. Finally, a great light shone forth as the enactron was opened. The Hierophant appeared from out of the enactron in the radiant night of the mysteries. Was there a sacred marriage of Hierophant and priestess? The presence of destruction, the presence of fire, suggests that some sort of destructive apotheosis was necessary. But it wasn't fear, it was the promise of good things that had to win out. The Mystes seized the goddess Persephone, the goddess Kore, who was called up by the Hierophant by strokes of a gong as the underworld opens up, terror giving way to joy and reunion. Then the Hierophant announces a divine birth. The mistress has given birth to a sacred boy, Brimo of Brimos. The mysteries, taking from death its terror, are the guarantee of a better fate in the afterworld. After Pythonicus, more informers came forward, each with a mock celebration to describe. One of these new informers, a medic named Teucris, also volunteered a statement with regard to the mutilation and furnished the council with a list of 18 names. But almost immediately after this, a certain Diocleides appeared with an even more elaborate story. Diocleides had, it seemed, watched the criminals at work. He had eyewitness reports. There had been some 300 conspirators in all, and as a preliminary he gave the names of 42. The result was a panic. An oligarchic plot was expected, and precautions were hastily taken to prevent the possibility of an organized rising. Meanwhile, the 42 were arrested and thrown into prison. Among them was Andocides, together with most of his family. Their situation looked desperate, and Andocides adopted the only course open to him in the circumstances. He said that he knew what the truth was, so he offered to turn informer on himself, on condition that he was granted immunity. This offer was accepted, and Andocides had little difficulty in proving Diocleides' story a fabrication. According to Andocides, there were actually only 22 criminals in all, and 18 of the 22 had been exposed by Teucris. Now, Diocleides might have been a pawn in a larger scheme, deliberately spreading misinformation. This would be to create confusion and to protect the real perpetrators, power players in Athens. It's conceivable that he was actually deliberately fed this misinformation, which he then disseminated, creating a smokescreen of confusion. This manipulation would have been a calculated move by the orchestrators of the scheme, exploiting their position and the gullibility of the paranoid demos to further their own agenda. Andocides' gambit was successful, and he was safe once more through the immunity deal granted him by the council. However, the fact that he had some connection with the outrage is definitely clear. A few years later, he was targeted by the so-called Decree of Isotimides. This decree held that anyone who had committed impiety and confessed to it in any context would be considered polluted and should be debarred from the temples of Athens and the Athenian Agora. 10 tumultuous years later, after the end of the Peloponnesian War and the rejection of Spartan control in 403, a general amnesty was proclaimed and Andocides returned to his homeland. His enemies, however, did not forget about him, and he was immediately charged with his old pollution. His defense speech on the mysteries is our best evidence for the entire affair. The profanation of the Eleusinian mysteries, shrouded in secrecy and protected by a web of deceit, remains enigmatic to this day. Though both Alcibiades and Andocides endured accusations, exile, and the anger of a gullible demos, the true depths of the cover-up may never be fully known. But one thing is certain, the mysteries, with their promise of a blessed afterlife, continue to draw initiates for centuries, a testament to the enduring human desire for connection with the divine. Okay guys, we're gonna have to leave it here for right now. Much more to say on that topic as always, but if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. It would really help out the channel very much. I'll see you in the next one.